First of all, I want to thank you all for coming out today. What we want to talk about, what I would like to talk about, is what the Tampa Police Department has seen in the 3 short months here in 2015. What we have seen is an increase in homicides in our city and an increase in the number of guns out in our community as well. Also, the number of drug deals that have ended in death have increased. We have also seen territorial disputes that are now being handled with gunfire. And also, those on the receiving end of these bullets aren't always the intended target and are sometimes innocent bystanders. What has not changed, unfortunately, is that we get very little cooperation from the witnesses and, in most cases, the victims in these shootings that have gone on in the past 3 months. And historically, we haven't had much help from witnesses out there in the community. I want to review just a couple of the recent shootings that we've had. On 3/14, we had a 16-year-old black male that was killed, Akin Boswell, in the Sulphur Springs area. He was with a group of individuals that found a relative's gun. They thought the gun was unloaded. They were horseplaying with it, and he was shot in the neck, and as a result, he died of that injury. And then the same day, we had Jamelyn Turner, who also is a 16-year-old who lived in Robles Park. He happened to be playing basketball out there on the basketball court on West Virginia, and was a victim of gunfire as well. And it is our belief that he was not the intended victim, but was an innocent bystander. Neither one of these individuals have ever had any contact with the Tampa Police Department. By all accounts, both very good kids. We had the shooting, as you're all aware, at Carmine's the other night at 1802 East 7th Avenue. We had 4 individuals that were shot. One individual, Sean Smith, 29 years old, he got shot in the elbow. Matthew Musmain was 28 years old, and he was shot in the abdomen. Went to TGH as a critical alert. And then Parrish Jordan, who was 23 years old, was shot in the abdomen, the neck, and the bicep. And thanks to the good work of the surgeons at Tampa General, he's still with us. And then Leroy Salvatege was 23-year-old as well, and he was shot in the buttocks. And that was a disagreement between individuals. That Carmine's was packed at the time. There were several hundred individuals at that location, and amazingly, very few people saw anything that occurred at that location. Now, when I talk about more guns being out on the street and an increase in homicides, I want to just give you some comparative statistics that we have. Aggravated batteries with a gun, we had 22 for the same period last year. We've got 48 so far this year, and we've made 18 arrests in those, but you can see that they've more than doubled. Total offenses involving a gun, 164 last year, same time, 235 so far in 2015. Homicides, we've had 15 homicides year to date compared to 7 last year. And what's important here is that one of the victims in those 15 homicides was a white male, 2 were Hispanic, and 12 were black males. So you can see the disproportionate number. Now, 2 of those have been ruled justified by the state attorney's office, and there's a possibility that a 3rd one may be ruled as justified as well. The number of guns stolen in our community, 52 last year, 117 so far this year. Guns recovered, we recovered 290 guns the first 3 months of 2014, and we've recovered 338 so far this year out on our streets. And we've had at least 4 accidental shootings. And when I say at least, quite often they're reported as drive-by shootings, those types, and then when we investigate further, we find out that they're individuals that have actually shot themselves by accident. Now, when we get a call of someone being shot, our officers respond immediately, detectives, forensics personnel. Everybody goes out and starts working these incidents tirelessly. Sometimes for days at a time, our homicide detectives don't go home. They work these homicides and these shootings as if it's a member of their own family. What we don't get is cooperation from the community, and we have got to have people come forward. They know what's going on. If you look at the individuals that were in Ybor City the other day, not just the people that were at that scene, but when they went home and they told other people what happened. They've got to give us information, and they've got to come forward and let us know what's going on the street. Not only do we work tirelessly to solve that particular incident, but we also work to prevent any further crimes from occurring. In the event that it's a territorial incident where somebody shoots somebody up being in the wrong neighborhood, then we have to look forward to who may be the next victim and try to prevent that shooting. So we're working as hard as we can. We have got to have the community come forward and work with us. We've got a great relationship with the community. That's why we've been able to reduce crime as dramatically as we have. But in these particular incidents, we've got to have people come forward and give that information to us. Now, I have seen the increase in community activism here in Tampa, and it's great to see. I've seen the increased activity and protesting incidents that have happened in other states. What we need is the community to get angry about what's happening in our backyard. Our kids are being killed, and we've got to stop this. But it's got to be a community effort. The citizens have got to work with the police department in order to stop this violence out on the street. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Dorothea Edgecombe, who is, as you all know, she's a member of the school board and she's a vice chair.
Thank you, Chief. I'm here this afternoon along with Acting Superintendent Jeff Akin because 3 of the students that the Chief described are 3 lives who have been affected, or our students. And it's important for us to understand and to tell the story that our students really matter, and that they aren't just numbers. They have names, they belong to families, they're a member of this school board, and it's the school district's family. And my message to the young people is that you do matter. And it is important that you place your loyalties where it ought to be, to yourselves and to the greater community. And so if you know this information, if you're aware, it is my plea, I'm begging you to come forward, because it's not going to change unless you decide individually that all of you are important as we think you are, and that every life matters, and that the numbers aren't just numbers. They are all about you. As a former teacher and principal and now school board member, my plea to you is to come forward. You matter. That's why we're here, to provide the very best education that we can have and afford and to give to you. But it won't happen unless you're in our classrooms, in our schools, so that we can teach you. Please, please, if you know anything about this, please come forward. Because if you don't, this is going to continue, and this is not the story that we want to be part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and next we're going to have the Acting Superintendent, Jeff Akin.
Thank you, Chief Castor. And I want to, first of all, we're here in support of Chief Castor's message. I mean, obviously, as Ms. Edgecombe had said, this has impacted 3 of our students, students who had friends in schools, who had teachers in schools, who meant something to their friends and teachers, and that's just a tragedy. We just can't have this continue. So the message we're here in support of Chief Castor is to speak up. We have to speak up. We have to cooperate. We have to make sure that this comes to an end. Obviously, all these incidents occurred on the weekends, but those weekends spill over into Mondays and Tuesdays in our schools, and it becomes a very emotional time for everyone involved. And it's time that we can't afford that kind of time to be wasted in our schools. We have to bring this type of violence to an end in our community, so that we can move on to the business of having productive lives for all of our kids and all of our adults in this community. So thank you for being here.
All right, anybody have any questions?
Chief, people not talking has been a problem, as you mentioned, for a very long time. So what do you do as a police department to try to overcome that?
Well, we've done a lot. You know, we've built great community relationships, relationships individually with our citizens, and we feel very comfortable with that. We never rest on that laurel. We work on that every day. But we also have a variety of ways that the community can get involved. We have the Tampa Police Department app that can be downloaded on the iPhone or the Androids, and that has the ability to provide information anonymously. We have Crime Stoppers. Quite often people will say, well, I don't get involved because I'm afraid of retaliation, which can be valid in some cases, but it's an excuse in my opinion. We have so many avenues by which people can give information anonymously that's an excuse and not a good reason. But again, I believe that it's one of two things. The community looks at it as the police department's problem, which it is, but it's not our kids. We investigate this like they're our family members, but they're not. And it's somebody's child. And if you don't help out in this instance, who's to say that, you know, it's not going to be your family member next? So that's one of them. And another one I believe is that people are just apathetic. They believe somebody else is going to do it, somebody else is going to make that call. We want everybody to call. Too much information is not a problem that we run away from.
Chief, is there any explanation why there's such a drastic spike from this year to last?
Well, there's never any rhyme or reason. It's one of the things that keeps us on our toes in police work. There's very little predictability to it, and we go through these spikes. But nothing like this. When you see consistently the increase in homicides, the increase in the number of guns out there on the street, and then the appearance that nobody's afraid to handle a dispute with a firearm. And the problem with that too is that right now, a lot of the shootings that we have had, the individuals are bad shots, but those bullets are going to find somebody. And when it hits a child or someone like that out in the community, then everybody's going to be up in arms. Well, let's handle the problem right now before we have something like that happen.
And I've spoken to a number of people in these neighborhoods, and they're scared. Is there anything that you can say to put them at ease? What are you guys doing to make sure that the innocents out there are safe?
Well, they need to be a part of the solution. We have, and we can show all of the neighborhoods in our community, throughout the community, how we have dramatically lowered crime and made them much, much safer. The Robles Park, where one of these shootings occurred, the crime there has been reduced dramatically. Sulphur Springs, unbelievable reduction in crimes there. But when you have someone shot that could be your next door neighbor, then the feeling is that it's very dangerous in that neighborhood. And again, that's why we need people to come forward. I tell everybody, every group I speak to, 350,000 citizens in Tampa, just under 1,000 police officers, you're going to keep crime out of your neighborhood with our help, not the other way around.
Were the numbers from last year pretty typical numbers, or that was?
They were pretty typical numbers.
So it hadn't been a steady increase, it just started this year?
Yes, we've had, especially with the homicides, you know, you go through peaks and valleys with that, but you know, the number of guns we're finding out on the street, and that has been more of a spike than a gradual increase.
And have these had anything in common? Are we talking about gangs, mostly kids? Is there anything, or is it just across the board?
It's across the board. There's a number of the homicides that involve drug deals gone bad. There were a couple of them that were territorial, one domestic related, so kind of across the board on that.
Territorial gangs.
Not gangs. Gangs is statutorily determined, and we really don't have that type of an issue here that you could say by statute that this is a gang.
Chief, are you in favor of stop and frisk?
Stop and frisk?
Yes, like New York had.
Well, that's two different questions right there. We do a number of stops, consensual stops out on the street. We stop individuals that are suspicious. Yes, we do stops out on the street.
I mean wholesale to try to find guns, just wholesale.
No.
Chief, the number of guns have been stolen have doubled. Is there anything that the police is doing to avoid these people obtaining these guns or be in the wrong hands?
Well, there's nothing and I don't want to say there's nothing we can do. We do everything that we can to educate the community, but what we have found is most of them have been taken in residential burglaries or auto burglaries where people are leaving their guns in plain view or someplace that people can readily locate them. But you know how it is in America, and especially in Florida. You know, where our gun laws are probably the loosest in the nation. So everybody has firearms out there, and we've reduced auto burglaries, we've reduced residential burglaries dramatically, but still, when people are going into homes and finding those, there's not much you can do about it.
Is there enough police to deal with all this crime in the area? Is there a low
Yes.
police officers?
No. We have enough officers. Actually, our ratio is higher than most police departments nationwide.
Are they targeting homes that they know there's guns?
We've had that occur. We have had that occur where individuals will have a rather large gun collection, and we've had those burglarized, or they'll target gun stores. And as we do with every offense, we put a great deal of effort into finding those, not only the firearms, but the suspects who committed the crime, and we do it with a sense of urgency.
How about the two teenagers that were killed the last 2 weekends? Were they caught up in something that they weren't targeted for specifically?
Yeah, as far as we can tell, the individual from Robles Park was probably the wrong place at the wrong time. And then the shooting over the weekend, Akin Boswell, from what we know right now, he wasn't a targeted individual. But that's an ongoing investigation.
Is this confined to particular areas of the city? You talked about Ybor and some of East Tampa, Sulphur Springs. Is that the main area, or is it? spread out?
No. Are you talking about the homicide numbers?
Oh, the problem you're talking about right now, yeah.
Yes, it's spread out throughout the city. The firearms that are being stolen, the firearms that are being recovered off of individuals, that's really all over the city.
And the homicides?
Homicides, yes. There are maybe more, you know, when you have 15 in a city our size, it sounds like, you know, you can't say it's a very low number because every life matters. But if you look at us compared to other cities our size, the number of homicides that we have are very, very low.
So are the homicides concentrated?
Yes. Well, no, they're not concentrated, but you will find the second part of that point was 15 in a city our size is very small. So yes, we have more than one in Sulphur Springs, more than one in the Robles Park area, but it's not pockets of them. They're spread around the city.
What about the ages of some of these victims? We're talking about a 14-year-old in this latest case. How does it feel to you as a chief to have to respond and address these types of crimes when they seem like they're kind of on the uptick right now?
Well, that's something else that we discussed in staff this morning is that what we're starting to uncover here, and we haven't been able to validate yet, but some of the word on the street is that it's these younger kids. They're trying to get the younger kids to carry the guns. And that's where we need the community to come in. You know, you cannot have a 13, 14-year-old carrying a gun around in the streets in our city. You can see what happens when that occurs. All right. Thank you guys very much.